Hello, and welcome to the Kaizen Academy podcast. I'm Justin, and I'm here with my co-host Cal. What's up, Cal?
Hi Justin, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm enjoying my Easter weekend.
Yes.
One downer is that I've been craving food so much. I'm still cutting weight for my BJJ competition. It's next
Right.
week, so after that I can start enjoying my food again.
Mm.
But
I saw your scars all healed up.
it's all healed up, yeah. So like
Actually,
last episode, I had like a big scar here. That kind of just scabbed off, fell off.
didn't
But it's
really
all good
leave
now.
anything behind too. That's good.
No, not really. Yeah.
Mm. I was afraid, you know.
Mm.
Um,
Leave some
but
permanent scarring.
where are you at with your weight right now, and where are you cutting to?
So I'm 60. This morning I weighed myself. I was 66.5.
Wow.
And then I need to get down to 65.9.
Oh,
Ideally a bit lower than that. So I'm
not bad.
almost there. I'm almost there.
Mm. It's been hard though.
Yeah, mostly because like Easter weekend there were like a lot of events.
True.
So it's like kind of
You're
feel
allowed
like
to
a
cheat.
G down, you know, because
Oh yeah.
can't be drinking with people too much or can't be like relaxing fully.
Yeah.
So timing was just a little bit poor, but it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right.
I brought it
Good luck
upon
on that.
myself.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all
Yeah,
right. Good luck on that.
yeah.
Oh
Cheers,
man.
man.
Are you just tracking your calories as well? Because I need to get on it, man. I'm always telling you, I'm like, oh, I'm getting so fat and stuff like that. But
I haven't been tracking my calories. I've it's been quite a lightweight system I've been using. I just generally avoid simple carbs, so like white rice, white bread, any like drinks, anything other than water is like a no go basically.
oh, nice.
Sometimes I'll sneak in a coffee when when I'm feeling like I don't know when the craving hits too hard or I need a
Yeah,
caffeine hit.
yeah,
But basically nothing apart from that. I think that's the biggest danger. Like soft drinks are like probably the easiest way to like put on weight because you don't get full, but there's like a lot of calories.
yeah. Fire out.
I've been skipping meals, so I basically just only eat breakfast. Oh no, sorry, I don't eat breakfast. I only eat lunch and dinner.
Yeah.
Um, and often, like for a meal, I'll just get 2 cans of tuna, just pour it into a bowl and just eat that.
Mm. Wow. Okay. I'm taking notes because
Yeah,
I think my biggest problem is the soft drink one. I never really think about the impact of it, but I'm always drinking it, and it's like just making my life that much harder to like lose any of the weight.
if you drink the no sugar ones, they're basically 0 calories.
True.
I'm sure it's like
Getting
super unhealthy somehow, but
yeah.
it's 0 calories.
You pay the price like in 30 years, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
When
exactly.
they find out the real consequences of drinking it. It's like, all right,
Yeah,
your future self will deal with it. That's cool.
yeah. Sorry, future Kale.
Yeah. No, that's good. All right.
But yeah, that's what I've been up to. But today we're going to be
Mm.
talking about a topic that I think it's maybe people don't explicitly think about, but I've certainly had a lot of trouble with personally, and that's taking notes for maths, science, and engineering. I've just always found that it's really hard to take notes for these subjects that are like actually useful until decently like late into my uni career where things started to click. I found systems that really worked for me. Um, but yeah, right before we dive into that,
Yep.
if you've been watching our episodes, enjoying stuff, remember to subscribe. We release a podcast episode every 2 weeks or so. But yeah, how have you been finding taking notes, Cal? Because you took a bunch of like of these subjects during high school, like maths,
Yep. Yep.
a lot of sciences,
Yep.
and then you did electrical engineering in uni, and you also tutor physics. So I'm sure you have a lot of valuable insight to bring to this topic.
I guess for me, it's also been a struggle when I transitioned over to uni. Things got a little harder then as well. But I think in my final years, I started to do what everyone was doing. So like just the popular thing, and it's like printing out the notes, printing out the lecture notes, and then and just kind of bringing it to class so that you have kind of scaffold, some kind of structure, so that you're not trying to like race the lecturer as he talks. You don't have to fill in every single thing. And I think that's one of the big stresses. I see a lot of people try to really get down every single thing the lecturer is trying to say, and then you stress more about not getting all of his words, and then you don't even pay attention to what he's saying. So yeah, I think bringing like that support, it really helped in my final few years, especially in the last year when I was doing a lot better than the other years in uni. Yeah, I was using that method a lot, which was very popular. Everyone's doing it, and I'm sure it's like the go to. But I think my experience with it is kind of unconventional, and I think I might have mentioned this before with you already, but I found like my take on note taking is very. It's just that I value. I think there's value in ineffective note taking. There's a bit of value in ineffective note taking, and I found some value in that. Um, I guess we'll talk more about this later, but for me personally, and I've mentioned this before, it's just that sometimes you're in a rut and like you just really can't get through something, and it's like fire out. If you write notes that require so much brain power, you might not want to do it. And sometimes I've found myself writing notes and I'm just copying out the textbook. But
Yeah.
I know it's like, and we know like obviously by all metrics, I might not be learning like very much, but in that moment I'm getting the ball rolling, and I find myself like 3 hours in, I'll be writing more effective notes, and it's like I've got the ball rolling. I forgot that I'm even writing these notes, and it's a lot easier to transition to into instead of like going, oh, I have to write these perfect notes, right? I have to write these perfect notes. But yeah, that's kind of my experience with it so far.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've had like a very similar experience in that, like early on, especially high school.
Mm.
I was very set on like making like perfect notes, right? Where kind of my perspective was on like, oh, if some random person read this, that would be like that. It would kind of teach them the subject as well.
Mm.
And that just took so much mental energy that I ended up never writing notes. Whereas if you're kind of like not used to making notes, right? Even just very basic notes, note taking is good because one, you're still doing something, you're getting the ball rolling, and eventually you can like upgrade, right? Maybe make it
Yes.
more, bit more comprehensive, a bit better for you to revise. But it's it's better to do something than to aim too high and scare yourself off and do nothing,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that point, Kel.
Yeah, so I just wanted to preface because I'm sure we're going to go through a lot of really interesting ways to improve the ways that you can take notes, but don't want to make it this like really scary, overwhelming task. And if the situation calls for it, by all means, just start copying. Man, I remember just copying. Like I would open up lecture slides when I was really down on my motivation to like study for a certain subject. Open up the lecture slides and I would literally just copy word for word, and then just try to repackage like 1% of it, rewrite 1% of it, and then like I'll get the ball rolling then, and then like in like 2 hours or something like that, I'll actually start putting in more effort. But yeah, that's it's always we're not saying that you have to always do it the best way. I think there are benefits to also like this ineffective note taking or just low effort note taking. I guess we'll start there.
I like that, yeah. So I think kind of the first point I wanted to talk about was why do we think that taking notes is hard for maths, science, and
Mm.
engineering? And I think I'll start off with one, and it's that often with these topics, it's not text isn't like or everything. Very often you'll have equations. Very often you'll have diagrams that are really necessary for the explanation um, of these subjects,
Yes.
and that makes things a lot harder because just say you like to take handwritten notes, right? Then yeah, formulas easy peasy because you can just write them out.
Yep.
But then images become like and diagrams become a big problem because you're not going to sit there and like sketch out whatever like diagram the lecturer has. Maybe you can, maybe you're good at art, but oftentimes, at least for me, it turns out being something like incomprehensible. Like I don't understand what I just drew.
Mm.
If you take digital notes, it's kind of hard to write down formulas. There's ways we can get around this, but
Yeah.
if you're just using the classic like Word doc or like Google Docs or something, right? It's a bit hard to like write down equations. So I think that's one of the reasons why I find taking notes for these subjects quite difficult.
Yeah. I think one of the other things as you're talking about it, like it's kind of hitting me where it's like maths, science, and engineering. A lot of the topics that you learn, subjects that you learn in this is like it's like 1 degree away from the English language as well. So it's like if you're writing notes about it, you yourself have to put in the effort to then translate it back to say some kind of sentence or some words and stuff like that. And I find putting that effort in makes it a little more difficult. I can't really imagine. I can't speak for it, but I'm imagining like maybe like I don't know, like more of the creative or the artsy kind of subjects. You already have something that is embedded in the English language, right? You're still writing words. In this case, sometimes writing a formula out isn't necessary or isn't going to be all enough. Sometimes you might need to write a formula out and then explain what that formula really means, right? And a lot of times I think students have to, or when you're writing notes for like these really STEM based subjects, you don't realize that you're putting in this extra effort and it's kind of like subconscious. So while you're doing it, it's like, man, this is hard. Because at the same time, you're trying to write these notes. And I think that's what you mentioned before, where it's like, try not to write your notes and pretend that or think that someone else is going to read it. Like what you're doing there is you're trying to attempt to write a textbook and you're just making your life like 10 times hard. Like people, professional PhD, like researchers, they write textbooks because they're unbelievably smart and they know how to do it. We're not supposed to be writing textbooks. So I think that's really good. One of the things is like, remember, only you are going to be reading this. This is for you, right? Who cares about anyone else? But that hopefully should take away a bit of that like cognitive load when you're working on your notes.
Exactly. We're all about reducing the cognitive load here, right?
That's
Because
it.
when it becomes too much, you start like making mistakes, or you start
Yeah.
being too lazy, too seebs to kind of do it. Any other points, I guess, on why taking notes for these subjects are hard, Cal?
I think you really touched on, like, honestly, the biggest part is probably the diagram part, and that's something that's really been alleviated with our transition into like digital note taking, right? So it has made our life so much easier. Now you can actually, like, if you really love handwriting, you can still handwrite, but you can still have this technical element to it where you can drop in pictures and stuff like that. But yeah, I remember finding that I needed a lecturer's slides whenever I wrote these notes because I would always be screenshotting diagrams. I found like I spent half the time writing my notes in all of our engineering classes just like copying diagrams in. Because yeah, if you try to type out something without the diagram, a lot of times concepts make absolutely zero sense. So yeah, I think that was probably the biggest pain point for me as well.
Then I've got one point to kind of finish off with this topic, and it's that I find that with these subjects, often, especially if you're going into an exam, right, it's not about regurgitating theory. Oftentimes, it's about answering questions. Like maths, yeah, you can like summarize the theory all you like, but if you aren't able to do the questions, you're not gonna be able to do well in your exams. Same with engineering, same with sciences. So often it's more about improving the skill of doing questions rather than taking the perfect notes. And I found like actually, at least there's ways you can change your note taking so that it focuses more on skills rather than just knowledge, I guess.
Damn. No, for sure. I think now that you kind of like triggered like a little memory in me, but like especially for physics and a lot of the science subjects back in high school, we all study off like something called a syllabus, right? Or they provide a syllabus to all the students, and students don't necessarily look at this all the time, but you can go on there and then the syllabus will outline exactly what it is that the government board wants students to learn, right? And so one way of writing notes is obviously to open up a textbook or like I don't know how you'd really structure it, but a lot of times back when we were still writing notes, I guess back when I was writing notes, the trend was to take those syllabus dot points and then read those dot points and answer it like a question. Answer it like a question, just like as if you would in an exam. And I think that has been much more effective than just kind of writing aimlessly. So it does kind of relate to what you mentioned before. Is everything
Definitely.
right on your end?
Sorry, my laptop's running out of batteries, so I was just
Scared me.
grabbing my charger.
Yeah, all good.
Sorry about that. Yeah, 100%. So like, yeah, physics, chemistry, we always had that big booklet of dot points, and then we would write it in terms of questions, and then you actually practice answering the questions.
Yeah,
So I guess it's more similar to like the exam context.
yeah.
Then I guess kind of just on the points of like with diagrams and stuff, let's talk about handwritten versus digital notes, Cal. What's your opinion on that?
I used to be a sucker for this. I used to be like, oh, you have to handwrite it. And I'm a big fan of it. But slowly, I've been moving away from it. Just as I teach more and more, and I ask my students year in year out, like, what do they think about it? I'm slowly building a consensus in my mind, seeing if it's really necessary. But now I'm a big I'm a bit more flexible in giving up handwritten notes, because back in the days I used to make all my students write out, like when I teach them they copy down everything from the slides, and slowly I've realized it's not that effective, and them listening to me, them making sure that what I say resonates with them, that they can wrap their heads around the words that I'm saying, is much more important in that case. And so yeah, for me, handwriting notes kind of takes like a backseat in this case.
So nowadays, you much prefer digital notes?
Yeah, I'm slowly, like, I remember back in the days, like when students would come in with an iPad, it's like, oh, stop being so extra. Like, you need to. I was very traditional in this sense. Oh, you need to write it out, right? Or you're not gonna have the same learning experience, or you're not gonna learn as much because you're writing it on like an iPad or something like that. But now it's like, it doesn't really matter. I'm not a big hater. I'm very open to that idea. I'm doing it myself quite often nowadays as well. And on top of that, I've realized how important it is for them to like incorporate diagrams in. Sometimes the students that are, especially now that I'm teaching online as well, like I send out all my slides so they can just screenshot. If they are writing notes digitally, they can just take all the pictures that they need. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the digital note taking.
For sure. Yeah, like digital note taking is great. I kind of have, I nowadays I use both because I really like handwriting notes. I feel like I learn a lot more when I'm able to like handwrite it, because I think it forces me to, even to a little extent, re rewrite the theory in my own words, as opposed to typing, because you can type so much faster that you can straight up copy down exactly what's said verbatim, whereas with handwriting you're really forced to reword things, and that I find that helps me learn a bit better. I also find handwriting notes, they often this might seem trivial, but it actually like helps me a lot as well. And it's that there's a physical artifact that serves as a reminder to study that subject. Like sometimes when
Cool.
I sit down at my desk, right, I have my like computer science subject book or something,
Yep.
like databases, whatever, just sitting there, and that reminds me to study it, right? It removes friction. It's like right there. I just grab it, open it up, and I could start studying. Whereas if I need to open up my computer, there's a couple steps. I need to turn it on. I need to open up my note-taking app. I need to get to the right page, and
Yeah.
there's a good chance that I'll get sidetracked along the way. I'll just instinctively open YouTube or open Facebook. So I find handwritten notes are they're less distracting, and I find I learn more from them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I often will still use digital note taking. My default is actually digital note taking if it's self-learning, because what I find is that I can improve my notes over time. So like I
Right.
write down my notes the first time,
Yeah.
I can come back to this topic
Edit.
and then edit it, like clean it up a little bit. And like once I've come back to it a few times, then I just actually have notes that are way better than if I had handwritten them.
Yeah.
They're much better worded, they're more concise, they're just better. So I tend to use digital notes if it's for self-learning, if I'm going to be using this knowledge for like the long term.
Can I?
Whereas,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Can I just ask? Because like I remember seeing this somewhere as well, and it was just saying how the more effort you put into doing something, the better it gets committed to memory. So I feel like
Yeah,
when you are handwriting, like the physical task itself requires you to be more in the present moment. I feel like when you're writing those notes, and I'm sure that's probably like an element to why you find yourself like remembering so much more whenever you like write it out. There's like a that tactile feeling, and like you're really engaging in that action. And sometimes you find like typing out notes. There are definitely moments where I'm typing out like mad paragraphs, and my brain is like somewhere else,
somewhere
like
else. Yeah, yeah,
completely gone, like not even paying any attention. So that, yeah, you bring up a good point. That's true. I think there are definitely, I haven't personally haven't had the like haven't really dismissed one or the other. Have It's always very like situational. It depends on what you're using it for in that moment. But yeah, that's really interesting.
definitely,
Like you gotta really engage in the action, and in doing so, you remember a lot more.
definitely. Like I'm sure I've read that somewhere as well. So we've got that part down, and also
Yeah.
like from my personal experience, I think that's true as well. Like I definitely find I just retain more when I write the notes compared to when I type the notes.
Yep.
But yeah, just to kind of close off on the point, I tend to use handwritten notes when I need to remember something more deeply. So like if it's a uni subject and I need to remember the things for an exam, then I will tend to use handwritten notes because I'll actually remember it better. But if it's more for just my own knowledge, and I can just reference my notes when I need to, like if it's for work or for like whatever, and I can just pop open my note-taking app, then I prefer digital notes because
Yeah.
it's just way more convenient. They don't
Yes.
clutter up your space or anything.
Yeah. Yep. I completely agree on that one.
What kind of notes do you tend to take nowadays for uni?
I'm not doing anything very intense at uni. I'm doing, as I mentioned to you last time, Justin. I'm doing the ethics subjects. So it's like
Yeah.
every week is like, is this ethical or is this situation ethical?
Hmm.
Man, yeah. So I'm like, I don't feel like I need to write that many notes. It's just
Yeah.
like the lecture slides are like, I don't know. Oh, we're doing like leadership, like what makes a good technical leader, and like yeah, it's not as engaging. So I'm really thinking back earlier on, like in like the year before when I was doing more of like the heavy engineering subjects. And even in that regard, most of it was just like writing on slides, and then as I'm attending these classes, writing on the slides, and then obviously as the exams roll around, summarizing that into something else or in another medium, whether I'm typing it up and summarizing or I'm rewriting it out. But I found myself actually, now that I think about it, yeah, like typing out, if I'm sitting down and we're going, okay, I want to summarize my notes, I tend to jump onto like a Google Doc and then summarize my ideas. If I'm in class, I cannot be typing notes. If I'm in class trying to listen and then multitask, then I think I need to write something down. I need a bit more that handwritten stuff. But yeah, for me that's kind of like the most recent kind of times that I've been writing notes. I haven't really been studying as much in the moment.
Yeah, very fair. I love annotating notes as well, and I think our next point kind of touches on that. I think one of the reasons why annotating notes is so powerful is that your own, like, it's really good for when you're learning um, while taking notes because you're not really doing the grunt work, I guess,
Yeah.
of like copying down all of the theory, making sure you capture everything so that for when you revise, you you're not missing anything, but you're also forcing yourself to make those new connections. You're like saying, "Oh, what do I think about this?" Or like, "How does this paragraph connect to like another thing?"
Yeah.
And I think that like touches on both points on what you want from a note-taking system, and it's two things. What you want is one, to be learning while taking the notes, and two is to have something that you can use to revise later on. And I think it's important to make these 2 points clear because I think when we kind of don't think about it concretely, then we kind of have an inefficient system that doesn't work well with either of these.
Yeah. That's cool. And that comes back to why we're talking about this to begin with, because it's something that most people, myself included, we do so subconsciously. And then by not putting any effort in, we just do it so poorly and not really get much out of it. But it only requires like a little bit of thinking, a bit of mindfulness to go, oh my God, like there's very little effort in improving the way that you do this. And you can really improve it very easily, right? But that second part, yeah, an artifact for revising. You remember, you're going to be reading these notes back. And I think one of the big ones that I just want to get out there is just, I know not everyone has the best handwriting. Um, I don't mean to call you out, Justin, but
Yeah, yeah.
you still need to do your best when you're writing these notes if you are handwriting them. And I've seen Justin's notes. Justin doesn't have like the best handwriting, but I know when he's writing serious notes, he actually puts effort into making it the nicest version of his handwriting. Because you got to put
Legible.
in the effort. At
Legible
least, it
rather
has to be at
than
least legible.
unintelligible by anyone,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
myself included.
Yeah. too many times I'm like, Justin, what is this? And he's like, I don't even know. Give me like, give me a minute. Let me just figure
I need
this
to
out
decipher this.
again. Yeah. And that is probably the worst thing you can do for yourself. If you're writing notes with the intention, obviously in this case, to revise, man, do yourself a solid and just slow down a little bit and just, take your time, write it out neater. And this is why, sometimes as I teach, you see the girls, they do this very effectively, right? Man, when girls write their notes, it's just like,
Different
oh,
colors and stuff. Oh,
yeah. It's like all fancy, got the little
Yeah.
headings.
Yeah.
And like it might seem trivial, but you know damn well if I had to sit down and study, my motivation's already low. And if I have to read some notes, compare that with like something that's really well presented, got nice colors and highlighters and everything like that, compared with like chicken scratch. I need I need any kind of motivation. So it's really important that, writing as neat as you can, or at least organizing it as well, and putting some effort in the presentation. That's something I think a lot of people kind of overlook too often, right?
definitely. Trying to read hieroglyphics while you're studying.
No,
You're increasing your cognitive load again.
exactly. Me and the homies don't want to increase the cognitive
Yeah,
load.
no, none of that. The boys aren't about increasing the cognitive load.
Exactly. But yeah, keeping the intentions clear when you write your notes. Like these, I'm gonna read later. So, yeah, do yourself a favor. Write as neat as you can. And I've always honestly always found it. Anytime I rush through notes, the likelihood of me returning to them almost zero. But if I'm like putting effort into like, oh, just a little bit. I'm not saying that everyone has to be like perfect writers, but like, or have perfect handwriting. Just a little bit effort. I always find myself, statistically speaking, I come back to it and I'm more inclined to read it, more inclined to look over it. Even if I have to just quickly skim through it, it's a lot easier to skim through neat notes and like grab the information you need instead of deciphering every single page and every single sentence just to find that one thing, right?
For sure. And I guess while we're on the topic of, so again, we've got these two goals. We're creating an artifact for us to revise later, and we're also learning while taking notes. Let's talk more about the first point. What else can we do to make us have nice stuff, a nice artifact for us to revise? I think one point is that, again, we've touched on it before, but you're writing notes for yourself. Which is something that I had a problem with. I was trying to rewrite the textbook, basically. That's not what you want. So I think what I've kind of learned over the years is only kind of write down or like put in a lot of effort into writing down the points that you have trouble with. You want to be identifying your weaknesses and putting effort there, as opposed to spreading out your effort equally, right? If you fully understand a topic, maybe dedicate a line or two to it. That kind of just reminds you of everything you know, and that's enough. But the topics that you're weaker with, maybe spend a lot more time like thinking about it, writing like out detailed paragraphs and stuff, because these notes are for you. They're not for anyone else. Even if your friends mooch off you, that doesn't matter. You should be writing. Yeah, it's not your problem. You should be writing notes for yourself. So focus on things that you have problems with, that you tend to keep forgetting, and that makes note taking so much easier and more useful.
I think everyone hearing that is probably going to immediately feel that it is quite counterintuitive. No one naturally does this, right? When they're writing notes, it's not like you will naturally tend towards just writing a whole bunch about the things that you already know really well. I find myself doing this really often, and then just wasting so much time. But yeah, if you put in that extra effort, make sure that you focus your energy where it's actually required. Be real with yourself. What are the parts that you actually need help in, right? The notes are there to help you learn. You've already learned something. There's no need, right? And that kind of not only does that require a bit of honesty, but it's also like confidence in yourself. Because sometimes you might be like, do I really understand? It's like, no, you already know about it. Just dedicate 1 or 2 lines, like you said, Justin, and then the rest really look for the things that you are struggling in. I like that.
And I guess another point, I'm just reading off my notes here, is collecting questions over theory. So this is very much for these subjects specifically, maths, science, engineering, because again, these are very skills-based subjects, right? You're answering questions rather than regurgitating theory often. So one technique that I found that has worked so super well is to collect questions that I keep making mistakes with. So if I get this type of question wrong, I'll collect these questions into my notes, and when I'm revising, I'll just redo these questions
Whoa.
So like
Interesting.
it's a very efficient way to study because you're attacking your weaknesses. And as we've mentioned before on this podcast, if you're time pressed, and in general, the most efficient thing to do is to attack your weaknesses than to be like working on your strengths. Because when you work on your strengths, there's like a logarithmic return. There's like diminishing returns when you're like studying things that you already know well. But when you're studying things that you're bad at, you can make leaps and bounds very quickly.
Right. So is this like you're doing like a past paper or something like that, and then like, or I
Yeah. So like
imagine.
as I'm doing my past papers,
Mm,
I like get a whole bunch wrong. Then I'll just collect those questions and then I save them into my bank of questions that
right.
I have trouble with.
Okay.
I won't collect everything because that becomes a lot of questions because I get a
Mm,
lot of stuff wrong,
mm,
especially when you first learn things, right?
yeah.
So I'll tend to focus on questions that are either like very unique or I just repeatedly get wrong.
Right. Damn. Yeah. This kind of ties into what we mentioned last time, right? Like when we were saying when you're doing the past papers, make sure you really just like do it once, find the mistakes, and then just repeat the ones that you actually get wrong. Don't waste your time on doing the ones that you do that you're killing at anyways. There's really no it's not necessary at that point.
100%.
Mm.
So I guess let's talk about learning through the act of taking notes. So this is the other goal when we're taking notes. And one, I've kind of figured out a system that works really well for me.
Yeah.
And I kind of, in my head, I call it progressive note taking. It's based on this idea called progressive summarization by this guy called Tiago Forte. Very smart guy, very productive guy. But essentially, it takes into account that note taking is a lot of effort. And one powerful thing to do is to split that up. So instead of going from like zero to a hunt to perfect notes, you turn it into multiple steps. So I kind of have a two-step process of first annotating. So like usually I'll just print out whatever um, like I need to study, like whether that be lecture notes or an article and stuff. I'll highlight, I'll annotate the things that whatever I think is important, and then just do a first pass that way. And that's very easy, right? Annotating and highlighting is not a very cognitively demanding task, so I'm not deterred by it. It's very easy to do. And then if I need to come back and if I really need to understand these topics, I'll come back to it and do a summarization of, in my own words, completely rewording what of the notes I've already annotated. And by splitting this up into different steps, I'm much more likely to actually do my note taking as opposed to trying to do a straight summarization straight away, which takes a lot of effort. And the first time you read something, you don't fully understand it. You need time to like crunch it, right? So by splitting it up over multiple steps and longer periods of time, your final summarization will just be better.
Whoa, dude, that's fire. Yeah, so that's kind of like your entry point in, like starting with the annotation, the low effort note taking. I feel like that's a bit more effective than me just copying out slides. But you know, everyone's got their own method. Everyone's got their own way. But yeah, that's really cool. Breaking it down. I think at the end of the day, there's no shortcut, unfortunately. But you need to give yourself a fighting chance. And so like these are different ways you can kind of get in and get the ball rolling. But it's just that you know you if you really want to commit something to memory, there will be some effort required. So, um, yeah, breaking it up will make it a little easier, right? For us to digest and kind of like tackle. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be putting in that effort. No real shortcut around here.
How have you found yourself learning, I guess, when you take notes? Do you find yourself learning quite a bit when you're taking notes? Or how have you found systems that work better for you in that regard?
Mm. I think with annotating, I've always done, but I've never taken it the next step. So honestly, for me, I probably I always felt that maybe I didn't learn a lot or I didn't learn that much when I was note taking because it always ended at annotating because I thought that was the complete total process of note taking. But now that I'm hearing it from you, I feel like yeah, that's the thing that I've been missing. Just taking another pass at it where I'm summarizing and going over everything and rewording everything. That's something that I haven't really done quite often. Now I'm thinking about like, especially when I had to do for my thesis, you have to do like your literature review, so read through a whole bunch of like scientific papers, and I was annotating a lot, and every time I annotated, I felt so good. I was like, yeah, I understand this, but then like I'd go into like next week my meeting, and then my professor would ask me literally to summarize what I've studied so far, and I'm like, I swear I really understand this, but I can't tell you anything about it. I apologize, mate. And clearly I should have taken some time out and like sat down and rewritten some of these things, because I gave myself that false confidence when I was annotating, man. Because it really feels like, because it, yeah, like you said, like annotating, it feels good. It's something that isn't really, never really deters me away, because it's not like a heavy task, and like I always come away with it quite a bit with maybe too much confidence. But now, yeah, if I had to redo it, definitely would sit down and rewrite a lot of these things.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes I hear the sentiment from like people who give study advice where it's like highlighting is useless. Never highlight. Like always like rewrite things in your own words.
Yeah.
And I think that's too authoritarian of an approach. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think it gives off the right vibe.
Yes, yes. They're too progressive, honestly. It's like, oh, it's beneath me. You know what I mean? Like, just because you found a better method, you got to understand, like, people do things because there are reasons to everything. And like, yeah, I totally get it. I've seen a couple of those TikToks where they're really against like all of that stuff.
Yeah,
Jeez.
like highlighting, it's like, yeah, in itself, you won't learn too much, but I feel like if you add, it's a useful first step. And then after that, it makes actually rewriting the notes a lot easier, right? So sometimes I think you should always have this intermediate step of first like digesting, highlighting, annotating, whatever you're studying. Give yourself a bit of time to like properly understand it. And then when you do summarize it, when you write it in your own words, it's so much better. You learn so much more, I think. So I guess kind of the next point I want to touch on was just different note-taking like systems that we personally use.
Yeah.
So I guess the first one I'll talk about is my digital note-taking system. I use Notion. It's a note-taking app. Very good.
I'm gonna be real. It's a bit. I tried this like a few months ago. I tried to get into it.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
big learning curve, Justin. Have you?
Oh,
Do you have
okay.
any advice for like? Because I don't know. There was so much hype around it. Everyone was showing off their Notion like setup, and I was like, oh, I want to get in. And then I tried, but it was so intense. Like, I feel like I was spoiled for choice because the app itself is so powerful and you can do honestly anything with it. But like, I did not know where to start, man. Like, could you give us like a beginner's pack? You know, what I mean, a starter pack for getting into Notion.
Definitely, definitely. I guess, do you mind expanding on what parts in particular you had trouble with? So that you're
I think
spoiled for choice.
yeah, like the high level structure, because so many people would like, this is how I organize it. This is how I organize it, right? And I came in, I'm like, I don't have the creative juices in me to figure out which way I'd like to organize all of these different tools and different like subsets of like booklets or whatever it is. Like, yeah, I wasn't too sure like how to go about it, and then I gave up. Honestly, just gave up, and I'm like, oh, going back to like just Google Docs. Now I'm just on Google Docs. Anytime I need notes, I just open up a new Google Doc,
Yeah.
and just type my stuff in there, which gets messy so quickly. After a
Yeah.
while, I have like 100 untitled documents, and I'm like, what is this? What is going on here? I'm trying to find that one time I wrote about some topic, and then it's like, yeah, I'm just struggling, man, struggling.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that, like, first, like, this, especially if you're a bit of a perfectionist, having, like, the proper, like, folder structures and stuff, like, ooh, how can I perfectly, like, design this,
Yeah.
can be quite, like, time consuming. So I personally use a system called Para, Para, by that same guy, Tiago Forte. And it basically stands for projects, areas, resources, and archive. So projects are any like just short-term projects that like maybe you're working on for like a few months or like a couple of weeks, right? So under this parent folder, I'll have notebooks for usually like if it's a uni subject, it would
Yep.
fall under projects. So like I'll have a Comp 3311 notebook.
Yeah.
And then I think if you're first starting out, you just need projects and archive. That's all you need. So just say in projects, you have your uni subjects, maybe like 3 of them. Just make 3 separate notebooks for that. Once you're done with this semester, you drag it into archive, so you still have it so that you can reference it later, but it's not in your face. Only the relevant stuff is in your face.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think you mentioned this last time with me, but it completely kind of went over my head. Projects was like things that end, right? So they have some kind of, there's a completion element to it. Okay, cool. Right.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
if it's like, if I'm, and this is like starting to go outside of studying, but it's like if I'm building a new computer and then I just want to write notes like, oh, I'm researching different parts and stuff, I would also call that a project. So I make a notebook for that, put different like articles or whatever, or like the part stuff so far picked out, and then I want to compare things. That'll be another notebook in the projects folder. And then once I'm done with that, I drag it into the archive.
Oh
Um,
man, that's genius.
whereas,
I feel like I've done that so often where it's like I've done research on something that I don't feel like deserved a complete like, like a one note section. But now that I think about it, I'm
yeah,
like, damn, they do deserve a section. Like, because sometimes I'll be researching, like you said, like a computer, or I'm looking for a new camera, I'm looking for new headphones, and I do so much research. And then like,
yeah,
and then I like, let's say I can't buy it in that moment. In a few months, I have to come back and I'm like, what did I find out again? Now I have to go through all the same articles, Google all these things. Yo, that's fine, Justin. You legit changed my. I might start doing this. Change my
yeah,
perspective on that.
definitely.
That's awesome.
I'll link you some articles, Cal.
Yeah, dude, it's mad.
Um,
Anything can be a project. That's the thing.
exactly. In areas, I tend to put things that are like kind of eternal areas in your life, right? Things like finance or like health, or things along those lines where there's not really an end point. It's just an area of your life
Recurring
and
things more so.
recurring things. And like, okay, you need to write down your, I don't know, your Medicare card or like your insurance stuff somewhere, right? You need to keep that in a safe place.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'll put all of that in areas. So like each category kind of gets its own notebook.
Yeah.
And then resources is the final category or final like parent folder. And that's kind of things that are still recurring that I don't, but they're not as important. And kind of the distinction is like, if it's just like interesting, like an interesting article, or like I'm just like interested in this topic, like just say it's like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or it's singing, or it's computer science, and I just want to take notes, then I'll put it more in resources. Um,
Right.
so areas and resources, they're kind of similar, but it's more like things that I tend to be more personal, like related to me, or like are more important. I'll tend to keep in areas,
Yeah.
and resources are more just like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this topic, or like, oh, this is a cool resource, or like, oh, let's like, I have a list notebook where it's like just lists of things. So it's like lists of YouTube channels that I like, lists
Oh,
of like authors that I like, list of restaurants that I like, and I
oh,
found
that's
that to
good.
be a
That's
pretty
good.
regular notebook that I use.
Kelly does that as well with like where we need to go eat. So we now have a list of places that we like, so that every
Yeah,
time we
yeah.
decide, it's like there's a place that we can go. It's not just like, oh, let's
Just
just
pull
sit
out the
there.
notebook.
Exactly,
Yeah.
pull out the notebook.
Ah, nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So she's been doing that. Oh, bro, genius. I looked at my folder schedule. I just like while you're talking, I was like, oh shit. I think that's kind of how I've been implicitly rearranging or arranging my folders on my desktop as well. Like I have
Yeah.
projects. I just never called it that. But I
Yeah.
think the bigger thing from this is just that I think the full blown method of projects, areas, resources, and archive, even for me is I guess you've been doing it for so long, so it's second nature. But even for me, it's a bit overwhelming. But now that
It's a
you're
bit
like,
overwhelming.
hey, you can just do projects and archive first. I think
Mm.
I'm gonna come back at Notion, see if I can round 2, see how it goes. Wish me luck.
Projects,
Yeah,
archives. I wish you
yeah,
luck, dude.
2. Yeah, dude,
And
2.
and I guess kind of apart from that, like Notion is quite overwhelming with the number of like just put like things that you can use. There's like a Kanban board. There's like calendars.
Yeah.
There's even like database. Like you can like create databases, like
Dude,
and
so
that link
much.
to different like notes and stuff.
Yeah.
It can be really overwhelming. I would just say start with the basics, right? Just use simple markdown, your bullet points, your headings. That's it. And as you need it, add like another thing to your repertoire. You don't have to use every single function in Notion.
Yeah.
But as you grow, as your note taking like increases, then you can start like implementing this. Like, okay, I need equations. Let's start using equations. Or your you need a database. Okay, now you can learn about the database. You don't force things. If you can, prefer to use the simpler options.
Yeah.
And only if you're forced to move to a more complicated option, like, oh, okay, there's like, I have this series of events, maybe like, and it's really hard to understand in bullet points, maybe it's time to use the calendar feature, but always prefer the simple features, I think.
Dude, I've recently, that's really hit me like very close recently, because when a few months ago, or like maybe even a year ago, when I tried to transition over to Todoist, so this is like for my to-do list. Todoist was so powerful, or so much more powerful than what I had, and it was just like so overwhelming. And honestly, I only changed over to it because I was like, I heard you use it. I didn't really actually need it for my own application, but I was like, oh, it's what Justin's doing. Justin's the cool kid, so I guess I gotta try to do it as well. And then recently, I've just come back to the most simple one. I've come back to like the really basic Microsoft To Do It, because like I just cannot get myself to use the more complex ones anymore. And I've just realized, yeah, like, gotta be real with myself. What do I actually need? Like, am I upgrading for no apparent reason, or do I actually need that functionality? Like, kind of expand that only when you're in like necessary, when it's necessary in that case.
Definitely. That's such a powerful idea. Just
Yeah.
keep it simple, expand when necessary.
Yeah, like reactive expanding, right? Ooh.
Reactive
Damn.
expanding. Ooh,
Damn, bro.
you termed it.
Bro, coin that. Write that down. Write that down. But yeah, so I see that with Notion, you can do LaTeX. So you can just write like LaTeX equations, is it?
So I guess
like,
coming back to like taking notes for like science, maths, engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I like LaTeX because it kind of covers the problems that I kind of talked about with digital notes, in that it's hard to write equations. With this, you can add in maths blocks. So if you know LaTeX, you can just type out your equations. There's a bit of a learning curve with LaTeX, but once you learn it, it makes it really easy to like write down equations. Being a digital like note-taking platform, very easy to add in diagrams. So it's like best of everything. It's amazing.
I think this is a really tiny part of it, but I like learning, say, writing equations on Word doc, right? Microsoft Word has a very unique, their own way of writing equations that I don't think really transcends outwards. But if you use like say LaTeX, or say by using Notion, you get to like implicitly learn LaTeX. Man, throwing that on your resume, come on, that's like an extra skill that I think it's not a complete throwaway. You know what I mean? It sounds a bit better, and I think it's something that I've been pretty glad as well, because we used to do a lot of markdown when writing sheets, worksheets. And honestly, I've gotten so good at LaTeX. I'm really proud of myself. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just glad that we did that. I'm glad that I was exposed to that. And now, anytime like I'm working on like LaTeX files, I'm just like writing equations. I'm like, damn, bro. Just like, look at me, like this guy. I used to be so scared of LaTeX, but now it's like it's not even that bad. It's actually rather simple.
Same here. I'm super proud. Like whenever like, because like it pops up once in a while. Like sometimes randomly you just need LaTeX. Like the most recent one for me was writing flashcards, and turns out you can use LaTeX in Anki, a flashcard app.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is a game changer. And I already know, like, so I can write. I know how to write a lot of different equations.
Yeah, exactly.
Using LaTeX, so it just comes in clutch sometimes.
Yeah. It's much more like the skill is much more applicable to other places. Like, you know, other platforms will use it. Unlike with Microsoft Word, like I remember trying to learn the way that Microsoft Word did their equations, and it's very much like a niche. Like you might get good at it, but you won't really find that like that syntax or that style anywhere else where you can reuse. But I found with LaTeX, learning it, it's like you come across, you're like, damn, look at me, I know how to do LaTeX. Because I'm redoing a lot of sheets, right, for my physics and stuff like that, and they're all in LaTeX now. We're doing everything in LaTeX, and I'm like,
amazing,
easy, typing out these sheets like a gangster. I was so proud that we went through like this rough period of learning, like using Typora. That was honestly, it was really rough at the beginning, like writing these sheets. But now I'm so proud of the skills that we built from then.
For sure. And if you're like a student in these subjects, right, there's a fair chance that you're going to be doing a thesis, and
Mm.
you're going to have to use LaTeX for that.
And even just writing
Um,
normal reports too. Like, yes,
mm,
your thesis guaranteed, but I remember some of our like more project type subjects, students were marked down if they wrote in like Google Docs or if they had their whole report written up uh, in like Microsoft Word, and the students who wrote it in LaTeX, because I think LaTeX is just like the STEM thing, man. Like all of STEM, we just use it. So yeah, I think if you can slowly start to get used to it in Notion, just like your everyday note taking app, I'm sure you're gonna really thank yourself. It's gonna pay dividends later on when you get into these subjects and you're writing LaTeX, you're writing these reports and things like that. Yeah, and
for
throw it on your
sure.
resume.
Exactly.
Looks good.
And I think this kind of touches on, I feel like a theme of our podcast that we always touch on is make it easy for yourself, right? Don't like make it impossible for yourself when you first start learning something. Make it easy for yourself to dip your toes in, and this is a good way to start learning LaTeX. You're still using a markdown editor, which is really easy to use, um, but you can insert maths blocks that use the LaTeX style of writing equations,
Yeah.
which is very nice. You're dipping your toes into writing LaTeX.
Yeah, because honestly though, like if you do take LaTeX head on, it's pretty scary, man.
It's pain. It's a pain. Yeah,
The document, and you look at the code behind the document, you're like, what the hell? There are so many different things you can do, right? But yeah, here starting off just learning the equations, and then when you jump into LaTeX later on, it's like I've already got one part of it down. So yeah, it's a bit easy in that sense.
so yeah, that's Notion. Like I love it. I tend to use it for basically everything, um, but it's actually not my preferred method of taking notes for uni subjects because again, I think I mentioned earlier, I feel like I don't learn as much from it.
Yeah.
They're good like for referencing, but when I really want to like deeply remember and understand a topic, actually my ideal thing is if I can get the lecture notes for the entire semester beforehand, like or someone's downloaded it from previous semester,
Mm.
what I'll do is I'll compile everything into a single PDF. I'll print it out at Officeworks, and then I'll annotate it. And then like on the back there will be like a blank sheet as well, and I can take extra notes on there. So like if I feel like I need to summarize, I'll summarize on there. And that
Oh.
by the end of my uni career, that was like my perfected system for taking notes
Yeah.
for uni subjects. Because again, you're not wasting time doing the grunt work of copying down all the theory
Yeah.
because you're worried about missing out something. That's taken care of because I literally printed out the lecture slides. So what I'm using my mental energy for is making connections. Like, okay, what is it? Like I'm looking at this equation. I'll like draw, like annotate what every single variable on it means. I'll write down my own thoughts like, oh, this is very similar to like a topic that I covered in a previous course. Really
Yeah.
spending my mental energy making these mental connections
Mm.
as opposed to copying down stuff.
You just reminded me, like, oh my god, it just feels like when we were doing full time uni, it was so long ago, even though it wasn't. This is, but something that Justin you taught me that is really fire, but is going to Officeworks and getting it all printed out, but not just any kind of printing, getting it binded. I'm not kidding. That's fire, man. Getting it binded and then getting like the whole plastic cover at the front. That's something you taught me, and I remember we did a subject together, and then you got me and you printed two copies, and then you gave me one. I was like, holy, this is crazy. It comes back to the notes are really nice and neat, and it just makes me more inclined to take a look at it, have a read of it. You know, it's not really like a messy pile of garbage or anything like that. But yeah, seriously, if you have access to like the whole course's set of notes or whatever, go to Officeworks, get it binded, man. That stuff, it costs a little bit, but I think so worth it every single time.
So worth it. Like $15 or so. You can get like a nice binding. You can get like a nice like clear cover, nice
Yeah.
back cover.
Yeah.
What I tend to do is have different colors for each of my subjects. So it's like even easier for me to remember. Like
Yeah.
green is databases, red
Yeah.
is operating systems, blue is whatever.
Changed my life, man. Serious. I did it so much, like pretty much every subject after you left electrical, because this was around our departing. Justin went to computer science, but I stayed in electrical. After that, I still printed out all of like, because I think in electrical, what was it? LSOC. It was like the LSOC notes, right? they would have those notes, and I'll grab it off there because they would have the notes for the whole course beforehand, and I'll just manage to print it out, bind it. So fire, legit. You guys should try it.
Definitely. And definitely use the option where don't double-sided print your pages.
Yes. Yeah.
The the blank pages on the back are so useful because you always want to like write stuff down, like extra notes or like summarizing things, like really your own understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do. Like,
That's-
do you also feel like there's like a bit of novelty to it, Cal?
Yes.
Having like something like tactile that you can like hold.
Yes, yes, and it's like, and like you were saying, even just having them color coded, and then and then every semester I would have like my 4 sets that I'll always access. You know, you come back to it. There's like you build this habit in your life, so that studying it becomes that much easier. But yeah, having the novelty of having that bind series is so cool, so fun. Just like having a nice notebook, but this takes it to the next level. To be honest.
Definitely. I remember there's like a lot of times where like I get my 4 like binded books, my
Yeah.
laptop, put it in my bag, head to
Oh,
uni to study during
so
the do back.
organized.
I feel like
What a king.
I feel like a king and like
Yeah.
damn, I'm ready for war. I'm
Yeah.
here to like study.
Wow. And everyone's gonna look at you like, oh my god, he's like, oh my god, wow. You know what I mean?
Wow.
That's my narcissism kicking in. But it's like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you hold your 4 notes, like, oh, this,
Yeah.
like your 4 notebooks and everything like that. Yeah. Looking organized, you know, it's one part of being organized, you know, to look organized as well.
Look the part. Yeah.
Look the part, indeed.
But yeah, that was my like definitely my preferred system of note taking by the end of uni.
Me
What
too.
about you,
actually.
Cal?
Me too, me too. Honestly, doing those subjects with you and then like seeing how you did it, I'm so glad that one time you decided to print me that extra copy. The rest of my uni career, honestly, that's where I found most success. It's like printing it all out and having it bind and everything like that was so fun. And you want to make these things fun, man, because without it, it's like, gosh, it's a drag sometimes. And if you
Studying can be boring enough.
Yeah.
Like try to inject some fun into it.
Yes, man. That if you're doing it, you might as well have fun, man. And I think it's one of the big ways I help me motivate through a lot of boring subjects. But yeah, honestly, my preferred method as well.
Awesome. Then do you have any final points, Cal, before we wrap up?
I think the other thing was in recent memory for my last intern, we had to study for our like certification exams. That one was a bit more theory, so I kind of took more advice from when we were talking about flashcards and stuff like that. And I found there were a lot of like websites that really build a lot of these flashcards out really well. I was using Quizlet a lot. And that one is just like, it's just more of community based because people just go up there and they build their own flashcards. So I managed to find so many like flashcard sets of people who've gone through the same exams as I did, even though my exam was quite niche. Because it's like community based, like everyone just kind of uploads their own one, and I just found so many helpful like sets of flashcards up there. So if you do need flashcards, yeah, Quizlet's kind of fire, to be honest. And they have a lot of learning tools where it's like you could shuffle mode through it. You can do one where it's like, oh, you reveal the answer right after, or you're gonna reveal the answer like at the end and stuff like that. But yeah, I just found Quizlet's really helpful for me when studying for more theory heavy. Because for that exam it was more just like memorizing and then being able to answer these multiple choice questions. But yeah, that deviates from the maths, science, and engineering. But yeah, if you do need flashcards, Quizlet.
Definitely. And I mean, there always is at least a little bit of like the theory parts for these subjects, right? I personally use Quizlet as well.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love it so much. Like,
Legit.
great interface.
Clean. It's clean.
Very clean interface. And if you can find a set of cards that someone has already made for whatever you're studying, amazing. Like chef's kiss.
Yeah, serious. Like they just know because they've gone through it. You know what I mean? That they put in the hard work, and oh, it saved me so much time. Because I think at the beginning I was trying to write my own ones, and then all the other interns they were already on Quizlet, and I felt like the biggest idiot. We just jumped on. We were all using that, and we all passed. So yeah,
Nice.
that's the result from that. But yeah, Quizlet.
Quizlet. And I guess just to throw it in as well, Anki is pretty good if you want to write your own ones. The good thing about them is that, like I was saying, you can write LaTeX equations on them. So if you want to memorize formulas and stuff, Anki's a pretty good option. Quizlet's a very good choice as well. Like I get torn between the two because it's just got such a nice interface. But Anki's a bit more like flexible.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I guess we'll finish off with our song recommendation for this week, Cal.
Yes, sir.
What do you have for us?
I have IU's. This is an old song, but I just kind of came across it again. It's called Dear Name. It's very OST vibes, but I'm kind of in that. I'm in that right now. I'm very like, I just love me some OSTs. But yeah, Dear Name, IU.
Awesome.
Check it out.
I'll check it out as well.
What about you, sir?
I do like IU. For me, I've got Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Lorde. This is a cover, actually. I think there was like an original version in like the 80s or something, like really old. But I can't believe like I haven't heard this song before. I just randomly came across it like in a YouTube video, and I was like, damn, this song's kind of fire. So I've been listening to that quite a bit recently.
Is this an official cover?
Yeah, so yeah.
Did
So
she put
I
on
think
like an album kind of thing?
I think it was used for the Hunger Games soundtrack or something.
Okay, right, cool. Where is Lorde, man? Now that like, I've legit totally forgot about her.
Yeah, she's like disappeared.
Straight up,
Like,
she's just
I
dropped,
really
like,
liked
this
the
fire
music.
album. Yeah, like
Yeah.
dropped like one of the most fire albums and then just like disappeared. Where's she
Yeah.
at, man? Come back, straight up.
Please.
I'm gonna check this out.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Cal, for being on the podcast.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Take it
Bye-bye.
easy.